Have you ever wondered what happens in the final moments before a nation finally admits the truth it's been running from? Not the public truth, written in textbooks decades later, but the private truth. The truth whispered inside locked rooms, behind sealed doors. A truth that could shatter the illusions of millions. It was past midnight in Tokyo. A cold drizzle tapped against the bunker doors. Inside, the War Council gathered around an enormous map of the Pacific, its blue expanse illuminated by harsh white lights. Smoke hung low from cigarettes that had burned too long in trembling fingers. Admiral Hiroshi Takamura, revered, feared, and burdened, stood at the front of the room. His uniform was immaculate, but his eyes, they carried the weight of a man who had counted too many ghosts. He cleared his throat. "Gentlemen," he began, voice echoing in the cold chamber, "America cannot be invaded." The words dropped like a stone into a still pond. Not loud, but surrounded by an impact that rippled through every soul present. Some officers stiffened, others swallowed hard, and one or two, though they'd never admit it, felt something unexpected. Relief. For this was not a story about war. It was a story about realization, regret, humanity, and about how truth, once recognized, demands to be spoken, no matter the cost. Kenji Sato never expected to be here. At 22, he had never fired a gun, never commanded a unit, never strategized a battle. His world was once made of painted sunrises, bamboo brushes, and quiet mornings helping his mother grind tea leaves. But war had a peculiar way of pulling even the gentlest souls into its orbit. Kenji had been assigned as a clerk, an insignificant cog, or so he thought, responsible for delivering reports, sorting documents, and keeping records no one ever wanted to read again. Yet tonight he stood in Japan's most secret command bunker, his hands clutching a folder filled with intercepted data. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, drowning out the low rumble of distant thunder. As he listened to the Admiral's shocking declaration, Kenji felt a strange flutter in his chest, a feeling he did not have the courage to name. Was it fear? Hope? Or the sense that he was witnessing a moment that would rewrite the world? His father had once told him, "Kenji, the world needs witnesses just as much as it needs heroes." Tonight, he finally understood. Across the ocean, in a dimly lit office in Washington, D.C., a young woman leaned over a pile of Japanese transmissions spread across her desk. Emily Carter, 26, brilliant and quiet, was one of the best linguists the military had ever recruited. Her translations were precise, her interpretations insightful, and her instincts uncanny. But what no one knew, not her supervisors, not her colleagues, not even the officers who swore by her skills, was that Emily had a secret. Her grandmother was Japanese. And sometimes, while translating these messages, Emily felt a pang of guilt, or belonging, or something she didn't dare analyze too deeply. Tonight, she paused on a particular document from the Japanese military. It wasn't coded strategy. It wasn't coordinates. It wasn't threats. It was weary. "We underestimated America's resolve," the Japanese officer wrote. "Their unity is their true weapon." Emily leaned back, chills running through her. She had been raised to believe that the enemy was an unfeeling machine. But these messages? They sounded human, vulnerable, and it terrified her, because it suggested the war was nearing a different kind of breaking point. Back in Tokyo, the council chamber glowed with red and blue markings on the enormous map. Admiral Takamura drew a long line across the Pacific with his pointer. "This distance," he said slowly, "is not the problem." The officers exchanged confused glances. "The problem," he continued, "is the American industrial power. Their factories produce ships faster than we can sink them, planes faster than we can destroy them, ammunition faster than we can fire ours." An older general muttered under his breath, "Impossible." But everyone knew the truth. They had seen the numbers, the graphs, the endless lists of American reinforcements. General Maury, known for his volcanic temper, slammed his fist on the table. So what? Do you want us to admit defeat, to face our people and tell them their sacrifices meant nothing? No, Takamura replied quietly. Then what do you suggest? Maury barked. We tell them, the Admiral said, what they deserve, the truth, before more sons die for a dream we cannot reach. Kenji stood in the corner, watching leaders older than mountains argue like wounded animals. He wondered, if a nation's leaders cannot face reality, who will? Hours later, long after the council disbanded, Kenji walked through the silent halls carrying stacks of documents. He passed by the Admiral's office, the door slightly ajar. Something compelled him to look inside. The Admiral sat alone, back bent, fingers massaging his temples. On the desk lay a paper titled, "To My Family." Only one sentence was written. If you read this, then I have finally admitted the truth. Below it, nothing. Nothing but the ghost of words that refused to be written. Kenji swallowed a sudden lump in his throat. He had never felt more sympathy for another human being. War destroyed nations, yes, but before that, it destroyed individuals in quiet, merciless ways. He folded the letter carefully, leaving it where it lay. He would carry the weight of that unfinished sentence with him for the rest of his life. Emily tapped her pencil against the desk, staring at the Japanese officer's note. We admire America's strength, not in weapons, but in unity. It felt almost apologetic. She pulled out her notebook and began writing her report, not in the usual cold, analytical tone expected of her, but with something more honest. They are tired. They are afraid. They are beginning to question the cost. Her supervisor skimmed it, brows knitting. Carter, this is unusually empathetic. I believe it's accurate, she said quietly. He hesitated, then forwarded it up the chain. Emily leaned back, her chest tight. She suddenly understood something her grandmother used to say. The enemy is just a stranger who hurts differently. Emily whispered into the empty room. Are we really enemies? Or just trapped on opposite sides? That night, Kenji found the Admiral standing on an open balcony, watching lanterns drift down the dark river. For a moment, Kenji hesitated. Approaching a superior officer at night was forbidden. Speaking casually to him was unthinkable. But something in the Admiral's lonely silhouette softened that fear. Sir, Kenji said gently, may I ask something? The Admiral didn't turn. Go ahead. Why admit it now? Why not continue fighting? Takamura took a deep breath, the lantern lights reflecting in his tired eyes. Because, he said slowly, a leader must know when he is saving his country and when he is only prolonging its suffering. Kenji felt the truth of those words settle into his bones. The Admiral looked at him and asked softly, Tell me, Kenji, do you think the people would understand? I don't know, Kenji admitted, but I think they deserve a chance to. Takamura nodded. For the first time that night, the Admiral smiled. Emily finalized her report and closed the file. But she wasn't satisfied. Something inside her pushed harder, pushed her beyond duty into something personal. She wrote an additional note for her commanding officer. If Japan's internal communications are showing self-doubt, then diplomatic pathways may be more effective than increased aggression. She expected to be reprimanded, but instead her superior gave a slow nod. We'll send this forward. Emily didn't know it then, but that single document would ripple across oceans and influence decisions she would never witness. Sometimes the smallest voice in a room changes the direction of an entire war. The next morning's council was chaos. General Maury roared, You want to embarrass our empire? Admit weakness? Invite disgrace? Admiral Takamura remained still as a mountain. "What good is pride," he asked, "if it leads us to extinction?" Mori pointed at him. "You sound like a coward." Takamura's voice stayed calm. "And you sound like a man willing to kill thousands more to avoid admitting he was wrong." The room split, half supporting the Admiral, half backing Mori. Documents flew, voices overlapped, the air vibrated with rage and fear. Kenji watched, horrified, as the men meant to protect the nation seemed ready to tear it apart instead. He had never felt so small, so helpless. But sometimes a quiet voice can cut through noise like a blade. Kenji didn't intend to stand. He didn't intend to speak. But something inside him, something small and trembling but determined, rose before he could stop it. "Excuse me," he said softly. The room froze. A young clerk had interrupted the war council. Kenji felt every eye burn into him. His throat constricted, but he forced himself to speak. "I know I'm not a soldier. I know I don't understand everything you do. But I see the fear in this room. I see the anger. And I see men who care about this country more than they care about themselves." A few officers shifted uncomfortably. Kenji continued, voice shaky but growing stronger. "If we keep fighting, more families lose their sons. More children lose their fathers. More land burns. More dreams die." His hands trembled. "Please, choose life. Choose truth. Choose the future, even if it hurts your pride." Silence swallowed the room whole, and in that silence Takamura closed his eyes, a moment of gratitude passing through him. Kenji sat down, heart hammering, wondering whether he had just sealed his fate or saved his country. Emily sat beside her grandmother, the warm lamp casting a golden glow across the tiny living room. Outside, snow drifted quietly over Washington, D.C., muffling the world in softness. But inside Emily's heart, a storm thrashed violently. Her grandmother, once a graceful Kyoto calligrapher, watched her with eyes that had seen two homelands and survived the ache of both. "You're troubled," the old woman murmured. Emily swallowed. "I'm reading things, Grandma. Letters, transmissions, from Japanese officers. They sound frightened, conflicted, human." Her grandmother nodded slowly. "War fools people. It whispers that the enemy is a monster. But monsters do not write letters home." Emily's voice cracked. "Is it wrong to feel sympathy?" The old woman reached for her hand, her touch fragile yet steady. "Compassion is never wrong, Emily. It is war that is wrong. If you can see their humanity, you may save more lives than soldiers ever could." For the first time since the war began, Emily realized she was not a translator of codes. She was a translator of pain. And perhaps, just perhaps, a translator of hope. In Tokyo, dawn bled pale light through the blinds as the High Council gathered again. The atmosphere was different this time, not fiery, not desperate, but resigned. Admiral Takamura stepped forward, posture firm, voice steady. Yet his eyes betrayed the internal battle he still fought. "Today," he began, "we speak not as soldiers, but as custodians of a nation that has endured beyond our lifetimes. We must accept a truth that is both humbling and liberating." The room was silent. "America cannot be invaded. Not because our warriors lack courage, but because they possess unity we cannot outmatch. Their factories, their resolve, their collective spirit. It is beyond anything we can hope to overcome." A few officers looked down. Some clenched their fists. One quietly wiped tears. Takamura took a long breath. "The greatest act of leadership is not victory, but responsibility. And responsibility demands we protect the future, even when the present is painful." Slowly, the council members nodded, not in agreement, but in surrender to a truth they could no longer deny. But truth does not always bring peace. General Mori, red-faced with fury, stormed out of the chamber. His officers hurried after him. "This is cowardice," he hissed as he slammed his office door. "Weak minds giving up before the real fight begins." One of his loyal captains whispered, "Sir, the Admiral's decision seems final." "Nothing is final," Mori snapped. "Not when the Empire's honor hangs in the balance." He pulled out a secret file, an unauthorized plan for a desperate, large-scale attack. A plan guaranteed to escalate the war into catastrophic territory. "We move tonight," Mori ordered, "with or without approval." The captain hesitated. "But, sir, this could doom us all." Mori's eyes burned. "Then let us be doomed with dignity." What Mori didn't know was that a quiet figure stood outside his door. Kenji. And his heart was pounding with terror at what he'd just overheard. Kenji's footsteps echoed through the corridor as he sprinted with the stolen notes pressed against his chest. His breath came in sharp bursts. "Stop that boy!" a soldier shouted. Kenji didn't look back. He turned corners wildly, nearly slipping, forcing his legs to move faster than fear allowed. Shadows stretched across the walls like grasping hands. He burst into the Admiral's office, slamming the door behind him. "Sir! Mori! He's planning an unauthorized attack. Tonight!" Takamura rose instantly, eyes sharpening with conviction rather than surprise. "So the last thread of pride breaks today," he murmured. Before Kenji could process that, Takamura placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did well, Kenji. You may have saved millions." The footsteps approached outside. Takamura straightened. "It is time to end this. Completely." In a private chamber, lit only by a single lantern, Takamura confronted Mori. The two men who once stood shoulder to shoulder now faced each other as adversaries. "Mori," Takamura said gently, "the war is over." Mori's jaw tightened. "No, you are surrendering. There is a difference." "We cannot win," Takamura insisted. "Continuing only ensures more dead sons, more grieving mothers." "Better dead with honor than alive with shame," Mori roared. The Admiral stepped closer. "This is not honor, old friend. This is fear. Fear of admitting you were wrong." Mori's hand flew to his weapon. Kenji, hiding behind the door frame, gasped. Takamura didn't flinch. "If you want to be remembered as a man who killed his own country's future, then pull the trigger." Mori's fingers trembled. Then, Kenji rushed between them, arms spread wide. "Please, please, stop," he begged. "Sir, Admiral, please. No more death. Not from the enemy. Not from ourselves." Mori stared at the boy. Something broke. His weapon fell to the floor with a dull clatter. "We were stronger once," Mori whispered, voice trembling. "And now, look at us." "No," Takamura replied softly. "Now we are finally strong enough to choose peace." Mori sank to his knees, the weight of his pride collapsing at last. Across the ocean, Emily sat at her desk beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, writing a message that could change the world. Her fingers hovered above the typewriter keys. Every word had to be perfect. She crafted a statement meant to be intercepted by Japanese intelligence, carefully worded to convey that the U.S. was open to negotiation, that surrender would not mean humiliation, that peace was possible. She translated it into flawless Japanese. Her heart raced as she typed the final sentence. "There is honor in choosing life." Her supervisor read it, nodded once, and transmitted it. Emily closed her eyes and whispered to her grandmother's memory, "Let this be enough." At dawn, Admiral Takamura received Emily's broadcast. He read it slowly, twice, his expression unreadable. Kenji watched from beside him, hands clasped nervously. The Admiral finally set the paper down. Something in him seemed to unwind, as if the message had given him permission to hope. America understands, he whispered. They do not seek our humiliation, only our peace. For the first time in months, Takamura's shoulders relaxed. This is our path, he said. Not surrender, transition, a bridge from war to survival. He turned to Kenji. Gather the council. Today we end this legacy of destruction. And for the first time, Kenji saw not a weary commander, but a man ready to lift his country from the ashes. After the council voted to cease hostilities, Takamura invited Kenji into his private office. Do you remember the letter you saw on my desk? Takamura asked. Kenji nodded, embarrassed. I apologize for intruding. No, Takamura interrupted gently. You were meant to see it. He handed the half-written letter to Kenji. I could never finish it. Every time I tried, the truth felt too heavy. But you, your courage, your honesty, gave me strength. Kenji unfolded the letter. If you read this, then I have finally admitted the truth. Takamura nodded toward the brush on the table. Finish it. For me. Kenji hesitated, but then dipped the brush in ink and wrote slowly, carefully, because I love you. And sometimes the greatest love is choosing tomorrow over yesterday. The Admiral's eyes glistened. That, he whispered, is the truth I could not find. When the peace announcement aired across the world, Emily watched from a crowded military office. Soldiers cheered, officers exhaled, some wept. The weight of war seemed to lift from the entire building like a storm cloud blown away. Emily, however, stood quietly in the corner, not celebrating, not crying, just feeling. She hadn't fired a weapon. She hadn't stepped onto a battlefield. She had simply chosen empathy over indifference. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. There are no enemies, only people who are hurting in different languages. Emily finally understood, and in that moment she made a silent vow to dedicate her life not to conflict, but to understanding. Months later, after the war's embers cooled, Kenji visited the Admiral's modest home. Takamura sat on the porch sipping tea, looking somehow younger without the weight of the nation on his shoulders. Kenji, he said warmly, I have something to tell you. The real truth we admitted. The one history won't record. Kenji leaned forward. It wasn't simply that America could not be invaded, Takamura said softly. Kenji frowned. Then what was it? The Admiral's gaze drifted to the sunset, glowing gold over the rooftops. That no nation can conquer another, he said, until it conquers its own pride first. And the moment we accepted that, we became free. Kenji absorbed those words, realizing they were not just about war, but about life, about every conflict, every relationship, every stubborn wound humanity carries. That night, Kenji returned home and painted his first sunrise in over a year. Because after confession, after truth, after humility, morning always comes. And sometimes admitting the truth isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a better one.